I call the member for Newtown.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise to speak on the motion that this House, 1, recognises the housing affordability crisis in New South Wales, with a large number of low and middle income households now in housing stress. 2, notes the long overdue recognition that inclusionary zoning has a role to play in the provision of affordable housing in New South Wales, particularly in Greater Sydney. And 3, calls on this government to set ambitious affordable housing targets of 30% for all significant new developments, including the Central to Everleigh precinct, the Parramatta Road renewal and the Sydney Olympic Park redevelopment. The issue of inclusionary zoning is just one of many mechanisms available to this government and to governments across this country to be able to address the issue of housing affordability. What inclusionary zoning does is defines to us the situation whereby we see that certain parts of land, certain targets of land, patches of land, actually have affordable housing targets set. And in setting those targets, what we do is start addressing the real issue around affordable housing in our community. People in New South Wales are earning very low to moderate incomes are increasingly unable to access housing affordability. The demand for affordable housing consistently exceeds the supply in a vast degree of cases, and the competition for affordable housing adds upward pressures to rents and house prices and leads to a decline in the number of available affordable houses. Just last week, Anglicare released their latest rental affordability snapshot, which found yet again that affordable housing options for people on low incomes, for families depending on income support, for single people surviving on the age pension and for young people on youth allowance, there just doesn't exist those affordable properties anywhere in the Greater Sydney area or the Illawarra. For couples on the age pension and for anybody earning the minimum wage, there is an extreme shortage of suitable rental affordability properties. We hear governments now at a state and federal level talking about housing affordability. They talk about wanting to address housing affordability, and they keep waving this magic word supply around. You see, on one hand they say they've got record numbers of supply, but on the other hand, they also might want to open the domain section of a certain paper, of which I provide a level of solidarity to those staff that are currently on strike. And they may open that section of that paper and they may see that actually we've also got record house prices. So it seems to be the more supply goes up, house prices keep going up. So maybe their magic wand of supply is not the answer. Well, I'm not saying that inclusionary zoning in itself is the answer, but it is one solution that we have. Now, inclusionary zoning, let's go a little bit pointy-head for a minute. Inclusionary zoning is a planning tool that can be used by governments to increase the supply of affordable housing by mandating targets for affordable housing dwellings in new developments that is guaranteed to be affordable and to stay affordable. Inclusionary zoning requires a developer to deliver a proportion of dwellings within a development as an affordable housing unit or make a monetary payment to build affordable housing elsewhere. The Greater Sydney Commission's district plans include proposals for inclusionary zoning, and while this is welcome, the question of whether 5 to 10% as affordable housing targets when we are facing such a housing crisis in this state is really concerning. It is not a game changer to be looking at those numbers, and we need to be seeing targets that are much more ambitious. And we also need to be making sure that there are not caveats, like the idea that they can be deemed feasible, and that would be the only place where we would see those targets occur. The New South Wales Federation of Housing Associations has called for targets of up to 30%, which would come a lot closer to addressing the desperate need for affordable housing in Sydney. There is no reason why those targets of 30% can't be met by government-led projects or in developments where the land has been rezoned to increase its value. Just in the electorate of Newtown, we are seeing the rezoning along the Parramatta Road renewal, the rezoning and the plans around the Central to Everleigh development, and in those areas we have the potential to seriously address the housing affordability crisis in this city by actually mandating for high levels of affordable housing targets. If this government, if the Premier, if this government wants to actually address the issue of housing affordability, then that is something that is open to them right now. What we need to also recognise is that there is a really, really desperate need to address housing affordability in this state. Any member of parliament that comes into Macquarie Street any day this week or in the weeks past will have seen that there is a growing number of people sleeping rough just outside this building. While we sit in here and while we debate this as a theoretical problem, and while we hear spin about the issues of how we're going to solve housing affordability, the rates of homelessness in this state go up and people are sleeping rough just outside this building where we stand today. The government has the opportunity to be able to address this immediately by putting in place measures such as inclusionary zoning that would address the issue of the shortfall of affordable housing in our community. According to 2011 census data, 28,191 people in New South Wales were experiencing homelessness. That is over 28,000 people that do not have a place to call home. And meanwhile, we are seeing the government rezoning and developing areas in our inner city without mandating targets for affordable housing, and this is a massive loss. It is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for this government to be able to address housing affordability. Of course, inclusionary zoning isn't the silver bullet that will on its own address housing affordability, but committing to ambitious affordable housing targets through inclusionary zoning is a practical step that would deliver large numbers of affordable housing properties. It is something that the Greens are committed to, it is something that many housing advocates are committed to, and it is something that really could be a very simple solution to be able to addressing the crisis in housing affordability in this state. There are many examples here in Australia and overseas, in London and New York, where inclusionary zoning has had a real impact. And so I call on the New South Wales Government to urgently commit to ambitious and mandated affordable housing targets in all substantial new developments, particularly in government-led projects where they have that control, whether it's the Central to Everleigh corridor, along Parramatta Road where that renewal is occurring, the Bays Precinct or the Sydney Olympic Park redevelopment. Thank you.